I think there's a real value and role to to be played in terms of the increasing role of sensitivity in human consciousness, because many of the challenges that the world is experiencing at the moment, whether it's environmental degradation, whether it's the ramping up of conflicts in different parts of the world, these are invariably result from increasing separation between human beings or between human beings and the natural world. And sensitivity is a quality that puts out those feelers to make deeper connections and to build bridges across the things that fragment and separate us as humans or between humans and nature.
Inluminance specializes in developing sensory processing sensitivity, a natural high sensory intelligence present in 30% of the population, co-creating with the power of humanity to consciously evolve towards balance. This session features trained high sensory coaches, facilitators and consultants who coach other high sensory people and partner with organizations globally. To contact them directly or to find out about our programs, please see the details in the description.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Inluminance channel. I'm Jane Elizabeth Aston, and I'm a high sensory and spiritual connection coach. And today we're going to be talking about the gifts and challenges of being high sensory people. So I'll introduce myself a little bit more fully in just a moment. But first of all, I want to introduce three of my high sensory coach colleagues who are with me today. So first of all, Kemal, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks very much, Jane. It's lovely to be here again. So my name is Kemal Shaheen. I'm a high sensory facilitator with a background in international development in the charity sector. And I work with charities and their leadership teams to help them align with their deeper sense of purpose. And you can contact me via LinkedIn.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kemal. Melina.
Thanks. Jane, my name is Melina Zipparo. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I support women, parents and caregivers navigate the symptoms of burnout, leading towards reconnection to balanced and purposeful living.
Oh, thanks, Melina. And Karen.
Hi, thanks, Jane. Great to be here as usual. So my name's Karen Hunt and I live in Devon in the UK, and I support high sensory mothers.
Thank you so much, Karen. And finally, I'm Jane. I'm from the UK and I work exclusively with high sensory people who want to explore their spiritual nature and deepen their connection and alignment. I specialise in working with high sensory people who, like me, are in 12-step recovery from addiction, but you don't have to be 12-step to work with me. You can find me at janeelizabethaston.com and on the High Sensory People podcast that I co-host with Alicia May. So moving on to today's topic, we thought we'd keep it really broad and open and see what emerges as our discussion unfolds. And we're going to be talking today about the gifts and the challenges of being high sensory. And I purposely ordered them as saying the gifts first and the challenges second, because I think my story really is that once I became aware of the gifts, the challenges became less bothersome for me. But I think initially when I found out that I was high sensory about 12 or 13 years ago, the challenges really were what struck me as I need to get a handle on these things that I've always found difficult, but I couldn't put a name to them. The things around feeling overwhelmed, feeling like everything was all a bit too much, the overwhelm. And I think if I, for myself, sum up one challenge, like the biggest challenge of being high sensory, it's guarding against overwhelm. That's it. Whether that is a noisy place or noisy people who are a bit much loud or forceful or just very energetic, it's kind of guarding myself, caring for myself appropriately in those environments, or removing myself from them. And that can be, I think, where a lot of our journeys start as HSPs. It is all about, well, these are the things that I've always found really difficult. Yes, now I know what's not wrong with me, but now I know what I am, who I am. And these are the things that are part of what I need to do to look after myself in the world. But I think what I've only really started to truly appreciate in the last few years have been the many, many gifts. And there's so many of those. And there's been, a fair bit written about some of them by, the likes of Elaine Aron and Jane Graneman and Andre Solo in their recent book. A lot about, we feel things deeply. We're very attuned to other people. We can read other people quite well. We appreciate, nature and, connection and all of those sorts of things. But I think for a lot of us, it goes deeper than that, especially, those of us who come through the programs at Inluminance. I think one of the key things that's really helped me to do is to become much more aware of and in ownership of some of the gifts of being high sensory, which is so wonderful. I find it hard to put into words. And I'll come back to trying to put some of those into words a little bit later. But I'd love to open up the discussion to all of us, just to reflect on, some of the gifts and the challenges, either over your lives or perhaps over the last few weeks, whatever you feel moved to talk about.
One of the things, thanks, Jane. One of the things that has come up for me, I'd say the last few years particularly, is because of my journey as a mother. And I think, and because I, work with high sensory mothers, because we feel so deeply, we care so deeply, we tend to put others' needs ahead of our own. And, you don't have to be a mother to do that, of course. Whoever it is that you're, let's say, leading. So whether you're a boss and you've got employees, you might care more about them, or your customers, or, colleagues, co-workers, family members, community members, neighbor, everybody. You can often put them before your own needs. But what I realized is that, on the surface, that can be okay for a while, but it's not sustainable. And so that really is the challenge. And I think one of the challenges is not to appear selfish, because, we don't like that, do we? We don't want to appear like we're being selfish. We don't want to be judged for that by taking care of us first. But something that I realized in my journey with my children is that I'm modeling to them that they do not put themselves first. I'm modeling to them, you prioritize everybody else. You meet everyone else's needs before your own. That's what I modeled until I learned this lesson. And I wish I'd learned it sooner. So I hope that, whether you're a mother or not, you really, really must look after yourself first. It is an absolute priority, because otherwise what we're doing is we're perpetuating this cycle of, Melina, you know about this, the burnout, because you will burn out. You will get ill if you don't prioritize yourself. And so I think, that is a real challenge. But it is also an opportunity to give to the world the importance of looking after yourself first, and how actually, if we all did that, we would all be in a lot better place, I think, anyway. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of put that one in for now.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I think and Kemal said something before as well, which kind of went ding in my mind, because he was saying, one of the intentions that he had was, bringing joy, do things that bring joy. And I can't help but think, sometimes I think of that as indulgence, joy and light is indulgence. And it's such a sticky psychology of the mind to get over, because it's it's very heavily instilled. And although it sounds like it's one of those things, isn't it? To look after yourself first is easier said than done sometimes, especially if it's so heavily ingrained into you, from when you're very young, that, moments of joy and happiness and peace and all, almost rewards for, sacrificing and working hard. And, you do that and then you get the reward of being happy, it's all very, it can get very warped. And my children brought that's like to me even just the other day, because they said, "Mum, you used to say, we'll do, one fun thing. We'll do one fun thing. We're going to dot, our holidays or whatever with, these, 5 or 6 fun things, and then, there's all this other stuff that we've got to do in between." And it's like what you said to Karen, said before, Karen. It's modelling. It's that really obviously spoke to them, that that whole philosophy of life, of that's what life's about. Like, you go and do the hard yards, and you work, you get up, and you've got that purpose of going out and do to have those momentary times of feeling relaxed and peaceful. And whereas it's in quite opposite in terms of how I think that we were supposed to be as as human beings. I'm pretty sure that it wasn't. It was the other way around, in fact.
I think a big part of it, and particularly we feel it acutely as highly sensitive people, high sensory people, is around the issue of energy. And I think, because one of the things which is a sort of a gift and a curse at the same time is that ability to feel energy so deeply, it often means that we're, through the empathy and the intuition, we're taking a lot in, and we're also sort of trying to give out a lot of, care and compassion and love, and or give out that energy, but they're sort of taking it in and feeling sort of bodily other people's emotions and feelings and energies in situations, or particular sort of vibes in a room, that can become very exhausting. And then our other propensity is just to sort of go round in our heads and turn things over and over and over like a broken record. And it was something that came to me the other day, was just about, and it was after a conversation with Willow as well, around the importance of play and that sort of childlike spirit of just feeling an untrammeled joy for life. And I think, and I completely agree with you, Melina, often we're taught to, or we see the world as kind of, okay, if we have little pockets of joy, then, but we've got to self-sacrifice until we get to that next little pocket of joy, and that can lift us up. But actually, if we're like a sort of a light that is able to sort of keep that luminosity and joy going through the dark times and the light times, then that feels like an important way for us as high sensory people to manage our energy, knowing that we can get very depleted and drained of energy. So it's sort of, how can we be in a state of stable joy, which doesn't mean sort of bouncing off the walls, but I think it is about equanimity. I mean, the Buddhists talk about it a lot, you know, in terms of that stability, that it's not a sort of a giddiness, but it's a lightheartedness that enables you to go through challenges as well as face, you know, and be creative. It's equanimity perhaps as much as joy.
No, I love that. Love what you've all said. Love that about the equanimity. And it reminded me of a saying, and I don't know who said it. I've heard it in recovery, of course. Hear all sorts in recovery, and it's not always referenced appropriately. So something about, I wear the world like a loose cloak or like a loose garment. I just sort of let it, I let it flow around me. That's a really nice aspiration. But going back to, what you've said, I think as high sensory people, we have a capacity to feel such a lot. We feel so deeply, we feel pain so deeply, we feel suffering, other people's suffering so deeply. It can be so painful when we experience that. There's deep empathy for people who are in pain or who are stuck, and I've had to do some work, and I'm still doing some work around, I just need to flip that into compassion, and keep myself separate from that, because their pain is not my pain. I don't expect somebody to take my pain. Not anymore. I might have used to in the past, but I don't now. My pain is my business. Their pain is their business. And feeling that compassion, that separateness, kind of working to that. That's, it's definitely been a challenge for me. Other people's emotions and energy leaking into me. That's been a challenge too, and sort of learning, ways of thinking, ways of reacting, and sort of, techniques like shielding and things like that, sort of energetic shielding to sort of prevent some of that stuff happening. Because yes, we are very, very sensitive to, attuned to, we have a great capacity for feeling energy. And, I know we each experience that in nuanced ways. But I think, for me to be able to feel the energy in the way I'm supposed to, and for it to be able to filter it, what I need, what I don't need, to get that filtered through me, I need to get myself in the right place. I need to make sure I'm well rested. I need to make sure I've, been eating food that is good for me and nourishes me rather than makes me feel like almost hungover. And that, that's one of the challenges of being HSP. But on that journey of what do I need to do to be okay in the world? There's also been so much learning for myself, which I've, used to help friends and family as well. And sometimes, beyond that, through sort of paid work as well. And then there's this huge capacity that we have for joy if we make time for it. Like, you've all said, it is about prioritizing that, possibly more than anything else. What brings me joy? Well, I'll move towards that then. And if we think, as high sensory people, we comprise 20 to 30% of the world's population. Well, that means there's 70 to 80% of the world's population who don't have this trait and experience the world quite differently. So perhaps it really suits them to live and work in a particular way, which is perhaps quite standard and expected of them by society. But I think as high sensory people, we have opportunities, if we want them, to do things quite differently and to make them work. And, we can sort of all think of people who are doing that. We're all doing that a little bit ourselves. So I love that. We have this capacity in the pursuit of joy to step out of societal expectations and live lives which are much more fulfilling. We have that because we've got a compass inside us that tells us not that way, this way. And the compass, speaking for myself, I didn't have any choice but to listen to that compass because it prodded me in the most painful ways when I was going in the wrong direction. In the end, I was like, okay, I'll go this way then. So, yes, It is challenging, but from the challenges, if we choose to surmount them, the rewards are huge.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jane. And so one of the things that I was thinking of is, especially as we're recording this in real time, it's the beginning of the new year. And so there's a lot of talk of, New Year's resolutions and things like that. So there's a lot of talk of doing something different and better. And one of the challenges that I've found is the typical advice for time management, productivity, all that kind of thing. I've always tried to follow, and it's never really worked for me. So I think that's one of the challenges that we have, that we really just can't necessarily follow all those strategies and tactics and things. We have to find our own way, and of course, there's general things that might well work for us, but we really have to look beyond that surface and get a little bit more. Well, I like your word nuanced. Because that's the thing. It really makes a big difference. Small shifts make a big difference, I think, to us. So, for example, you might time block, and then those in between times, you really have to be quite intentional what you do in those in between times. Like you need to have 5-10 minutes for meditation, or for a walk in nature, or for something that works for you, to give you that break that you need, depending on what kind of work you're doing. If you're taking on energies of other people, you need a certain type of break. Perhaps if you're doing a lot of head thinking kind of work, you might need a different type of strategy. And it's really important. Other people might be able to just get through the day and work through it and then blow off steam after work, but you can't really afford 8 hours of of not taking these small breaks, I think. So and if we do that well, then there's that gift for us, because you don't have to burn out. You can actually keep showing up and doing the things that you want to do in the world and making a big difference in the world. Because you learn how to navigate yourself, your emotions, your energy, and you can really bring a lot of joy into the world as well, through learning how to use yourself, like develop your own user manual, essentially, as a high sensory person.
I think there's something really important about listening to yourself and being able to listen to yourself. Jane, I picked it up with you when you're talking about developing your own moral or your own compass to help you navigate these. And Karen, you're also talking about your own user manual. There's something about blazing your own trail here that is aware of what it is, that where you get your energies from, where energy is depleted. So you're living in that sort of sense of deep awareness of who you are and how you operate at your best in the world. And then being, as part of that, that's where the self-love and the kindness and the self-compassion comes in, because you say, well, this is how I'm wired. The world might not be geared up for my particular brand of sensitivity. So I'm just going to have to go out there and blaze my own trail. And that's about listening to myself. That's about taking care of myself, because that's when I will do the best work in the world that I'm here and I'm equipped to do. And you won't be able to do that work if you don't listen to yourself, if you're not tuned into your energies, and if you're not. So you are the best author of that your own user guide, and it's really, and because you're so sensitive, you can tune into that. But that requires a kind of don't get lost in the mental churn, but listen to other parts of you. It's an embodied listening rather than a mental thing.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, Kemal, and also what you had said, Karen. about, and I think following all of that is overcoming one of the challenges which I found is it's feeling the loneliness, like feeling like, you know, the difference, the, you know, I'm different kind of the barrier. And I think that is when you're surrounded by non-HSP people that, you know, and it's difficult. And I understand it's a challenge for them as well, because I totally recognise that. So I think there's a lot of things that follow from that need to, pave your own path. And I think that involves developing confidence and, seeing that it's okay to do that, because, actually giving yourself permission to say it's okay to, go down my own separate path. I don't need to follow the pack. Because I think as HSPs, you've got, a struggle, because, a lot of the time well, I know myself, I get frustrated, because I always kind of go, why would they do that? That question of, well, why wouldn't they think that? And I think a lot of that is, yeah, you're wired to have that empathy and, behave a certain way, and, feel for others in a certain way. And the questions, just keep on, that barrage of, why isn't the rest of the world like that? But then, you turn that into, so developing, having that confidence without it tipping over to arrogance almost, it's it's an art. It's an art which, we're all developing, and, it's something that we can, it's something to be embraced, I guess, in other, rather than, this huge hurdle and challenge. It's, it gives us, sometimes having that 360-degree view is beautiful. But yeah, it can also put you in a very vulnerable and lonely position in life, which can then bring in a lot of feelings, like a lot of, it can lead to, a lot of negative stuff, as well as, the positive.
Yes, and I really identify with that loneliness. And for me, finding a community of HSPs was a game changer in helping me to recognise actually that what I have as a high sensory person is different than many people, than most people who aren't high sensory, certainly. So, Karen, you were sort of talking about, working. And I remember, when I had a job, when I was an employee, and I was expected to be at my desk, my employer were really flexible. So I was lucky, I could get there anytime between 8 and 10:30 and they wouldn't really care. And I could leave anytime between about 3 and 9 and they wouldn't really care. So I had a lot of flex, but nonetheless, I was expected on average to work a 7.5, 8-hour day. And that was really hard for me. And I got really, really tired and really overwhelmed. And what I didn't realise actually until I started hanging out with other HSPs more often online and, just kind of immersing myself in that world was that actually my 4-hour day is so focused and so productive because we do have that gift generally. We have great focus, great attention to detail, as well as often being able to step back and see the big picture. So it has a context. What we do, even though it's focused, it has a context. We don't go down rabbit holes uselessly, generally. So my 4-hour day is as productive as a non-HSP's 8-hour day. And I've had to really, really believe that in order to charge, for my time appropriately. My time is really valuable. 2 hours of my time is possibly worth 4 hours of a non-HSP's time in what I can give, in the value that I bring. So that is both a challenge and a gift. And like, don't listen to the head. I think, Kemal, you were talking about that, like not getting caught up in the chair. And it's really hard to do sometimes, because we are certainly, before we perhaps become fully acquainted with what being high sensory is, so do tend to think a lot. We process a lot, of course we do. Process a lot, think a lot. And yet the importance, I think, the gift of being able to, and I'm lucky because I got trained to do this in 12-step recovery. Don't listen to my head, do the next right thing, take some action, one step at a time. And, and I was thinking, I was reflecting to all of you before we hit record that this time last year, I was living in a house with my ex-partner. And we were very, it was very peaceful, but nonetheless, I was living in a situation I didn't really want to be living in too much longer, and not really knowing what I was going to do next or where I was going to be. And when I thought about how to make those changes to get me into the joy, when I thought about following the needle of where my compass was telling me to go, I felt completely overwhelmed. And yet, one step at a time, I was able to move out of there, move into somewhere else, get that ready to Airbnb it, move to a Greek island for a couple of months, and that's where I am. And if you told me I'd got to do that again this year, I'd just go, I can't do that. I absolutely can't. That's too much. I can't manage it. But by not listening to our heads and by just taking a little tiny bit of action every day, literally not worrying about whether it's going to work or not, I think that's one of the great gifts, that we do have this compass, this capacity for following the joy. And if we do that, it takes us to really good places. And also, there's something about the spiritual aspect of being HSP that I really want to talk about and touch on. We have that as well, the non-material, the spiritual, the whatever that means to each of us, being part of something bigger than us, being connected, all that stuff. It's really important. It's really important to me. It's really important to a lot of other HSPs that I know. And that gives life so much depth and meaning and purpose. Like, if I imagine not having that, just that aspect of being high sensory, well, I don't want to live if I haven't got that. That's what it's all about. So that's a huge gift. And I know I spent the first 30 years of my life not in touch with that at all. I had no idea. It was even there. Not really. And so the last 22 years have been spent reclaiming that, moving towards it, moving towards the light. And now I'm in a place where I'm surrounded by water and light just for a bit, which is really wonderful. And because I'm HSP, my God, I feel the joy of that. The light on the water. Every day it's different. And I feel so lucky to be able to appreciate that. Because I don't think people who are HSP get that level of joy and wonder from those seemingly simple, natural things. A huge gift of being HSP that makes all the challenge worth it. It means I would do it all again if I had to get here.
It's a constantly trying to navigate, isn't it, between sort of the light and the dark, and I think that's a particularly acute struggle if you are high sensory, because as soon as you're talking about the light bouncing off the water and dancing on the water, Jane, I immediately feel it. It takes me back to walks along canals with my dog, and and just being getting so much energy from seeing the moon reflected in the water, or the wind blowing through the leaves on the bank, or seeing a kingfisher come over my shoulder and then follow me up the river, or rather I follow the kingfisher up the river, and all of those things. And the colors are more vibrant than I've ever experienced them before. So I think that sensitivity, that being able to tune into the light of the natural world is a real gift, but it comes with an acute awareness of the shadows that are there in existence as well, and feeling it in a very it's almost like our bodies are dense vehicles that we need to carry us through this material world. And probably there's a yearning and an aching in our hearts to spend all of our time in the light of spiritual reflection, or in the light of basking in the glory of nature, and and the energies of the earth. And it's a tight, we're edge walkers, aren't we? We constantly walk this edge between light and dark, and light and shadow, and it's a curse and a gift. And just being able to find a way of protecting our energies, because part of our purpose and part of our gift is being able to walk that tightrope, but also being able to transmute some of those darker energies into the light, through the love, through the compassion, through the empathy, through feeling other people's pain so acutely. But it comes at a cost to ourselves and our energy, and we talked about this before: addiction and breakdown, and overwhelm and anxiety and stress. It's a constant walking of the tightrope, isn't it? And finding community and being able to, that was something you had said, Jane, so important. Finding other people who are walking that tightrope with you is crucial in following the compass, because you realize you're not alone.
Yeah, absolutely. This whole issue of community is something I wanted to touch upon, because it is so important. That I think it's the biggest indicator of your health, the quality of your relationships, even more so than nutrition and exercise. It's crazy to think that the people that you spend time with, communicate with, can have such a huge impact on your own health and well-being. And so therefore, if you're HSP, it's even more important. Firstly, this idea of loneliness, because we feel different. Those of us at this age will have probably experienced that. And I hope certainly that new generations won't experience that loneliness, and that they're not okay if they're not the same as everybody else. That's definitely been shifting, hasn't it, in the last few years? But you don't have to necessarily surround yourself these days in person with other HSPs, but certainly connecting with them online at the very least is so nourishing. We've talked about this many a time with our conversations. That is it's so lovely, and it nourishes our soul to have these conversations, because we know we're not the only ones who feel this deeply and who think this way. And it's so validating. And, we can go off and better cope with the challenges that crop up, knowing that we're not alone in this, and that we can connect with each other. So, definitely reach out to other HSPs, join the community at Inluminance, or whatever you need to know that you're not alone, and it's so validating. And it's challenging living in a world that's not designed with you in mind. So at least if you can get some help, support, then do that.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. I think on that as well is that as the world does evolve and the acceptance of HSPs and a lot of other all of the neurodivergent behaviours that I think that will then develop its own challenges as well, because what will happen is that I can feel and I sense and I know from experience that there's almost a toppling over of everyone's got a little bit of neurodivergence, or everyone's got this, and I think it's really important to not be caught up in the label of HSP in the sense of I am a HSP and that is my whole identity. It's honouring that HSP part of you, and embracing it, and as Kemal said, using it to transmute the dark to light. And that's how I try to see a world of HSP people living in harmony with all of society. It isn't something to divide us. It's most certainly something that can be used to enhance us, but not to divide, and not to say, I'm this, so I can't kind of, associate, or I can't associate properly with, I think that there's lots of, it's funny, when as we evolve and we assimilate more, it kind of does breed other things that come up, and it is all to do with our path of evolving. And I guess that's what we as humans are here to do, and that is to evolve and to be the best version of ourselves, so that when we leave with this world, it's we're leaving as much better humans than when we came.
Yeah, I love the way this conversation is kind of geared towards the importance of the community, of HSPs finding a community. That's really important. But also of the role that we as HSPs have in the community of the world as a whole. And I know being part of an HSP community has made me more able to go out into the world and be part of that. Because if I'm more fully in ownership of myself, if I know more how to navigate the challenges of the trait, and I am more appreciative and aware of the gifts and the benefits of the trait, well, then I'm very well prepared to go out into the world and do whatever it is I am supposed to do on a day-to-day, mundane basis, walking down the road, saying hello to somebody, stroking a cat, whatever it is, as well as, in my work. So I think, this importance of community and connection is so huge for us. And, my experience is that being part of an HSP community has helped me to be very certain that I am worth taking care of myself, that it's worth it, that I'm worth it, that I deserve it. And the importance of that, so that I can be part of everything that's bigger than me, and be, useful and helpful and joyful. So, I love what's come out today. Has anyone got anything else they would like to say in closing?
I just wanted to pick up, because I think that's a really important point you were making, Melina, about these not being labels that exclude and separate us from others. But I think there is something about, and another thing that you talked about, Melina, was about the sort of evolution of consciousness, and about, and I think there's a real value and role to be played in terms of the increasing role of sensitivity in human consciousness, because many of the challenges that the world is experiencing at the moment, whether it's environmental degradation, whether it's the ramping up of conflicts in different parts of the world, these invariably result from increasing separation between human beings, or between human beings and the natural world. And sensitivity is a quality that puts out those feelers to make deeper connections and to build bridges across the things that fragment and separate us as humans, or between humans and nature. So if 20% of the population have an enhanced capacity for feeling sensitivity, there's almost like a sort of a barometer for wider human consciousness to whether you refer to it as ambassadors, or whether you refer to, or just instruments that can tune in, to help generally uplift and increase sensitivity in our world for everyone. And I think everyone's got the capacity, but it's about tuning in. And I think we're well placed to enable people to tune in that way.
Yeah, really well said. Really well said. And it reminds me of one of the people that I was lucky enough to coach, and she talked about that being HSP, we can shine the light and help everybody to see better. And we don't, and I love this, she said, I love this, she said, and we don't each need to bring a chandelier. We only each need to bring a candle. And I think as high sensory people, we're probably going to be the first with the candles. But then hopefully we help everybody else to bring candles too in time, and bring about those changes that are so sorely needed. So I really loved our discussion today. We never know what's going to come out, but we always think it's quite good when we finish. So I hope, that everyone watching enjoyed it too. Thank you all so much, Kemal, Melina, Karen, for all the wonderful insights that you brought today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.